What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham Jesus and Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. And today we're talking the My Way, The Life and Legacy of Pat Patterson documentary that dropped on Sunday on the network. This was great stuff. This dropped on the same day as the Chronicle on Bianca Belair that I talked about yesterday. And that was awesome, too, don't get me wrong. And go check out my review of that when you get a chance from yesterday. But I feel like this documentary is not getting talked about enough. And it's not getting seen by enough people because of the Belair documentary dropping that same day. I wish they had dropped this on Saturday or just on a different day all to itself, so it wasn't being overshadowed by the Bianca documentary. But this was really, really good stuff. Now, I read the Pat Patterson autobiography a few years ago, and it was really, really good. I learned a lot about Pat from reading that. They talk about a lot of the same stuff that he covered in the book in this documentary. But for those that don't know a lot about Pat's career and more importantly his life, then this documentary is for you. Even if you do, it's well worth the watch. It was really, really well produced and had a lot of excellent content. So to kick it off, we go all the way back to where he grew up in Montreal, Canada. He was born in 1941. His real name is Pierre Clermont. He talked about how he was part of a big family, 5 boys, 4 girls, so 11 people in the family, including the mother and the father, and a very poor family at that as well. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, no living room, 1 toilet, no bathtub, and no shower. So they had to go to the local pool in order to shower, in order to, get clean and whatnot, which is crazy. So we talked about being an altar boy growing up and how that was when he realized he always wanted to be in front of people. And then he went to local wrestling, really fell in love with that. One day he recalled carrying the bags of Killer Kowalski. And then Killer Kowalski's like, yeah, sure, whatever, kid. So he followed him into the arena with his bags. And then from there watched the show, I think from the back. So he basically snuck in, I believe, by carrying Kowalski's bags, which was funny. Soon after, he got a job at the arena selling hot dogs to the audience, and he never sold any hot dogs, and they would ask, why aren't you working? Like, what are you doing? And he would say, oh, no one wanted the hot dogs, so I sat down and just watched the matches, which I thought was funny. He knew a kid in his school whose father was a promoter, so he knew that was his in. Soon after that, he started training for like $5 a match, really, really cheap, but it was better than nothing because, again, his family was very poor. After a certain period of time, he knew that he had to go to the U.S. in order to make a career out of it. He knew that he was going to get his greatest success in the U.S. and not just in Canada. He also talked about how no one knew he was gay at that point. No one knew he was gay growing up. People would talk about, my girl. Like people, I don't know if they probably knew he didn't like girls, but I don't think they knew for a fact that he was gay. So one day, I guess, he talked about his first experience being with a guy and why it just felt right to just be caressed and held and whatever, and how it felt right for him. And he was so excited that he went home, woke up his parents at 1 o'clock in the morning, and told them that he was in love with a guy. He told his mom and he told his dad, and they were like, oh, that's nice that you're in love, honey, but please don't wake us up at 1 o'clock in the morning. And then he said it was with a guy. The mom was hesitant, but she wasn't, like, angry or whatever. The dad was. I don't know if he was angry, but he was just like, all right, we're not going to have a queer in our house. That's what he said. We're not going to have a queer in our house. And the mom was like, oh, no, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And Pat said, no, listen, I'll leave. I'll just get out of here then. So he left home at the age of 16, which is crazy. So he took a Greyhound bus. One of his sisters gave him $20 to Boston. And that was all that he had for himself. That was all that he had to go off of. He didn't know any English, so he was at a disadvantage there as well. And one night, in working more matches and starting to wrestle more, made a career out of that. He made $50 one night, which was a lot of money back then. That's a decent amount today, but for one match, that's nothing. But back then, that's a lot of money. So he went home one day. I forgot where he got Pat from, but he got Patterson from the dictionary. Because, again, he didn't really know much English at all. So he went to the dictionary. One of the first words or names that he found was Patterson, and he used that as his last name, and that's how Pat Patterson was born. So he talked about meeting Louis, his life partner, and how he fell in love with him soon after meeting him. And they were living together, and Louis really had to, he sacrificed everything to be with Pat, which was cool. But, he was also very selfless because Pat ended up getting a letter from Mad Dog Vachon saying that he was booked over in Portland, Oregon. So Pat had to move all of his things over to Portland. Louis stayed where they were, in Boston, I believe. That's where I think they met, and they were for a while. And Louis eventually ended up joining him in Portland. He left his family, he left his stable job, he left everything just to be with Pat, which meant the world to Pat Patterson. So he goes to San Francisco after being in Portland for a while, really nice city. Got told that he should go to San Francisco. He can make a nice career for himself as a wrestler in San Fran. And while he was there, I forgot if it was the promoter, Roy Shire, or if it was someone else on the roster, or even his tag team partner, Ray Stevens. I don't remember. But someone asked him, "Aren't you gay?" And I don't think he actually told them that he was, or he just, he just downplayed it or whatever. But someone asked him, and nothing really came out of it from there. They just asked him, and that was about it. So he teamed with Ray Stevens, and they were a great tag team. They dominated the West Coast tag team division in the 1960s, and they had a lot of heat. And he talked about how he always wanted to be a villain. He was a great bad guy, and he eventually turned babyface, and that's why he always had such great longevity, because he always knew how to reinvent himself. So while he was wrestling, before he started wrestling, when he left the house, when his dad told him to get out, his dad also told him to never come back. So he said, "Never come knock on my door again." After becoming such a big name in the San Francisco area as a wrestler, and making a great living for himself and whatever, meeting Louis, he asked his parents to come visit, and they did. He picked them up from the airport, and his mom started bawling, and she's like, "Oh, I've never been in a Cadillac before, blah, blah, blah." He really took care of them. And there was a nice picture of him with his dad and his mom, and he didn't really talk about the dad much after that, but he goes into greater detail about his dad and their relationship and why he wishes they kind of broke that barrier a lot sooner. It's a great book, and I can't recommend it enough. But the documentary does do that relationship justice. I just wish there were more details, but again, this is only an hour documentary. You could do like a 3-hour documentary on the life of Pat Patterson. He was that fascinating of a person. So anyway, he invited his dad to come over to San Fran to visit, met Louis, and they took care of him, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so his parents prior to that point never got to see him wrestle. They did there, and they thought it was really cool. And he also talked about how he was never really open about his sexuality. And he didn't really feel like he could be himself or be free. And then he got brought to MSG to wrestle for the first time there by WWF. And he got hired there. And Vince Sr., I guess he told Vince Sr., he was like, "Oh," I don't think he told him that he was gay. I think he just said, "Oh, have you heard things about me?" And Vince Sr. just said, "Listen, I knew about you. I know what the deal is here, and I don't care." So he had his first match for WWF. I believe he said with Bob Backlund. We hear from Bob Backlund too, which I thought was really cool. He became the first ever, the inaugural Intercontinental Champion a few months later. Had a no-holds-barred match with Sergeant Slaughter, a hardcore alley fight, I think they called it, and it's one of his best matches of all time. And how that predated all hardcore matches. And during that run, he got to MSG. He got to main event MSG a bunch of times. So after his career kind of started to wind down, he became an announcer for WWE alongside Vince Jr., both as a, not ring announcer, but like a, ringside interviewer, commentator with Vince. But it was hard for him because he didn't speak a lot of great English. He didn't put the S on things, which he was notorious for doing, which was hilarious. But it didn't exactly translate to a very successful broadcasting career for Pat Patterson, and he realized that, which was funny. So he made the transition to the office, and it was only supposed to be for a few days, but it ended up being a position that he never left. And he helped Vince write the shows. Pat said about Vince that he hated holidays because he was always working 7 days out of the week, and he hated calling people on holidays because they would never pick up. Well, no shit, Vince, because it's a holiday. It's Christmas morning, sorry. They don't have time for your shit. And we hear from Kevin Nash, who talked about Pat Patterson and how they mapped out everything in a literal book. We talk about the booking. They literally had all of their booking in an actual book. And they praise him for not being a yes man, and they always looked at it from the fans' perspective. And as a booker, he wanted to be creative, he wanted to be innovative, and do stuff that had never been done before. So this is where the Royal Rumble match was born. And this story's been told a million times elsewhere. But he told Vince about this idea about, we have, battle royals. But what about if we start out with 2 people in the ring and then have someone come out every 30 seconds to 90 seconds to a minute or whatever? And Vince thought it was stupid. He thought the idea was dumb. Dick Ebersol, I guess, was consulting with Vince about additional maybe pay-per-view ideas or live specials for NBC. I don't remember exactly. But this was when they were being, on the front lines against WCW, NWA, and they were doing their own Starrcade, Clash of Champions pay-per-views. WWE needed something in addition to WrestleMania. That was all they had at that point, was WrestleMania. They wanted more ideas. And Vince was like, oh, go ahead, Pat, tell him about your terrible idea. And Dick Ebersol absolutely loved it. The first one was a huge success and ended up becoming an annual event, which we're going to be getting this Sunday, which is cool. So, he's very happy to be part of that success. We see him backstage at the 2016 Rumble exactly 5 years ago from yesterday when this dropped, which was really cool. Shawn Michaels praises him. Bret Hart said that Pat was a huge part of his success, and how the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12 between himself and Shawn was Pat Patterson's idea in putting that whole thing together. They talk about how Pat, helped people put a match together, and how Stone Cold calls him a master of psychology. So he got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back in 1996. And he had this great line about sharing the award with Louis, his life partner, who he called like a dear friend, a great friend, whatever. Obviously, he was a lot more than that. But this is when he wasn't openly gay. So he wasn't going to say, oh, my boyfriend or my husband. I'm not even sure they were ever married. They were just partners for a long time. And Louis was there. I did not know that. He was there for the Hall of Fame induction. He outright acknowledged them. So people probably knew at that point that they were together, but he wouldn't actually acknowledge it. So we find out that Louis passed away from a heart attack, just dropped dead in 1998. Pat Patterson was in Philly for the King of the Ring 1998 pay-per-view for WWE. Got a call that Louis died. Just absolutely devastating. They were together for 40 years. And he took some time off after that, came back in 98, 99, probably 99, and became a stooge for Vince after that. And he had fun with it, him and Gerald Briscoe, and it was a great gimmick. But he questioned it at times because he knew that he was a wrestler deep down. But he did end up winning the Hardcore Championship out of it. And we got that awful, the nightgown match at King of the Ring 2000. God, that was fucking terrible. But yeah, so he ended up announcing his actual retirement as a wrestler from WWE at Taboo Tuesday 2004. I don't remember that at all. I watched that pay-per-view before. I don't remember the Pat Patterson send-off. I don't remember that. So he didn't know what he was going to do after that. He got the call about Legends House, didn't want to do it originally, which I thought was funny. Mean Gene said that he would not have survived that entire time had it not been for Pat Patterson. He was a very fun guy to be around. He knew how to live life. And it was on that show that Pat Patterson finally came out of the closet, and admitted he was gay. He was openly gay at that point. And it was a really nice moment. It made for a great, I don't know if it was on the season finale or on the penultimate episode. I reviewed the show here for Network and Chill 4 or 5 years ago, so you could probably find my thoughts on it there. But it was a great episode, and Pat's part on the show, cannot be overstated. He was such a great and big part of that show. And Vince said, after he came out on the show, Vince said, well, everyone already knew. So Vince is the type of person who's like, what's the big deal? We already knew this. But anyway, they talk about Pat Patterson always wanting the best wrestling show and how he never really retired. He would always come back to work whenever he wanted to, whenever Vince would want him. Vince didn't want to let him go. And Cesaro said that he was a guy that just loved wrestling. And he never really retired. And how he always used to hide out in a crowd during the shows and just watch the shows. He owes everything to the wrestling fans, he said, and how that was always such a great environment for him to be in. So obviously he passed away back on December 2nd, 2020, just over a month or two ago, at the age of 79. And Bruce Pritchard said that he actually he was probably one of, if not the last person, in terms of people from WWE, that saw Pat Patterson alive. He saw him a literal week before he passed away. And for the very first time, Patterson told Pritchard, I know I don't have much longer. I don't think I have much longer. And Bruce thinks that he knew at that point that he was gonna pass away soon after. And so they had this great tribute for him on SmackDown on the subsequent Friday, which was great. We hear Sami Zayn pay tribute to him. He played a big part in Sami Zayn's success. Kevin Owens had a great, great not speech, but his thoughts and tribute to Patterson on Twitter after he passed away was great. They show that here. The Rock paid tribute to Pat Patterson. They were always very close. And even Vince pays tribute to him too, and he gets a little emotional talking about it. Stone Cold says that he had passed along a lot of knowledge over the course of his career, and that Hogan said that even he helped him. Had it not been for Pat Patterson, he would have not broken into the business and become the major superstar that he was in WWE. And then we see a shot of Patterson at his appreciation night. I think after Raw one night in 2015, May 4th, it was the same night that Sami Zayn came out and answered the opening challenge from John Cena for the United States Championship. And that was the great, a great final parting image to end this documentary on. And I thought this was great stuff. I really enjoyed this documentary. Again, a lot of the stuff I already knew from reading his book a few years ago, which is also a must-read, by the way. I think I did a review of that here for the channel like 2-3 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago at this point, I think. But yeah, no, this was great. Check it out right now on the WWE Network. My Way, The Life and Legacy of Pat Patterson. And they definitely did his career and, more importantly, his life justice. But again, there's so much more here that they don't get into an hour-long special. So I implore you to do more research, read more about him, watch more videos of him, because Pat Patterson really was a remarkable individual. And that's it, guys. Thank you, as always, for checking out my reviews. I appreciate it. Check out more reviews of original specials on the WWE Network in the description box down below. Like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. And hit that bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. Tomorrow, we have a Raw Talk review and a straight-up Steve Austin review. Wednesday is hashtag AskGSM. Thursday, WrestleRant radio excerpts. Friday, a Total Bellas review. I think the season 6 finale, I'm pretty sure. So there's a lot to get to here on the channel. If you're not already subscribed and you haven't checked out the recent interviews with Roman Reigns, AJ Styles, Apollo Crews Fandango, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Keith Lee, what are you waiting for? Check them out right now. You will not be disappointed. Have a great week, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.